Job interviewers of Reddit. What is the worst answer someone gave you? Was interviewing a candidate with a few co-workers. He was fresh out of college and this was for a mechanical engineering position. Asked him to explain a time he had to troubleshoot an issue and how he fixed it. He starts telling us about a time that the front wheel on his car was squeaking and how he was going to figure out what was wrong. Gets about 2 minutes into describing his process, then I crap you not says never mind, you wouldn't understand the issue to a room full of engineers. Plot twist. The issue involved pure mathematics. Tell us why you left your last job. It was boring. I didn't like it, so I started calling in sick. Calling in sick? Yeah, telling my boss I was sick, but I really just didn't want to come to work. I like that terminology. Me. Is there anything in your past that could prevent you from passing the background check? Candidate. Well, last week I got arrested for domestic dispute because my wife put her hands in my face, so I bit her finger off. Me. Silence. A few years back we advertised for a job developing a cancer biomarker. We got an interesting CV from a guy that worked in DNA forensics. While the details were lacking, it was an interesting enough CV to get him in for an interview. Once there and the pleasantries were out of the way, the interview went as such. Could you tell us a bit more about your work in forensics? What kind of techniques are you familiar with? I was a janitor. I want that man's skill at making a CV. I asked her to describe a time when she had to complete a repetitive task and how she stayed motivated. Her answer was waking up every morning. I asked how she stayed motivated, and she said she didn't have to because her mom got her up. I'm not here to actually interview. I just want this to be a practice interview for other companies. I walked out. Never say that during an interview. My current job was supposed to be a practice interview. I love my job. Never worked with a more competent bunch. I helped interview some people once for a government job at an international center in rural Japan. This was a job where foreigners who didn't speak Japanese would occasionally come in and talk to staff. So even though the staff didn't have to be perfect at English, they had to at least be able to understand the basics. In the interviews, my boss had me start out by asking the participants simple questions like what's your name and how are you feeling today to see how they would react. The point wasn't to test their ability but just to make sure they would be able to handle an unexpected situation where a foreigner was speaking to them in English. And it was horrible. The first guy who came in just stared at the floor for about 2 minutes without saying anything. One girl started to actually cry a little bit. Of course, since this was the beginning of the interview, it threw them off for the rest of it as well. I felt like a total butthole, but on the other hand, if you cry when someone speaks English to you, you're probably not the best pick for the job. I usually cry when people speak to me in any language. Asked an interviewee to tell me about a time they'd built relationships with colleagues, departments, suppliers, etc. She proceeded to tell me how she started having an affair with a work colleague. Not quite the answer I was expecting. See, that's on you for not being specific enough. Interviewing a woman for a casino cashier position. Me. How much money would you feel comfortable handling on a daily basis? Her. None. I don't want to go to jail. Interviewing a nervous person for their first job. The question is, what role do you typically play on a team? Candidate. Defense. Me. This is an interesting response. Can you tell me more about that? Candidate. I hate sports and don't want to have to touch the ball. It was definitely a memorable answer. I worked in the daycare at a gym, and one of the interview questions was what is the nicest thing you've ever done for someone? One interviewee said providing a false alibi to the police for my boyfriend. So sweet. Hi there, I might just doise, thanks for coming in today. Is this going to take long? I'm parked in a 15-minute spot. I was interviewing a guy for a job as mall security. I asked the standard interview question, what is your biggest weakness? He responded with, weakness, and then nearly maniacal laughter that lasted uncomfortably long. I jumped to the last question and ended the interview early. The guy creeped me out. You dang near hired a super villain, buddy. Bullet dodged. Asked a question about conflict resolution. This very small person with a Napoleon complex responded with 2 physical altercation stories he had at work, both of which he initiated. He beat them up though and walked out. The thing that got me was he was chuckling through each story like I was supposed to be impressed with his fighting skills. It wasn't an interview, didn't get that far, but the job application. It was a dog walking position for a pet company and we have a question asking about experience. Now obviously this means experience working with handling dogs. But someone answered like this: I've been walking almost my entire life. Not gonna lie, that's pretty funny, unless they weren't trying to make a joke. Why did you leave your last company, sir? I am not going to lie, I was fired for fighting a customer in the parking lot. Nice honesty, but dang. Interviewer: describe yourself in 3 words. The guy stutters, really struggling. Interviewer: okay, if I asked your closest friends how they would describe you, what do you think they'd say? He stutters more and just blurts out, Welsh. I asked someone what their sales experience was and he said I know this doesn't sound professional but I sell drugs. Points for honesty : had the following people apply for my company: software company, trapeze artist, sheep sitter, certified chainsaw user. Best one was where the kid put down one of his attributes as bravery. She talked about using drugs on a cruise she went on. She harassed me for months after and claimed I was racist because I wouldn't hire her. Tried to call my boss and then his boss. She was lovely. Hopefully the bosses recognized your excellent decision not to hire this person. Instead of asking me to repeat the question that they had misheard, they tried to pry my clipboard out of my hand so that they could read it. And when I didn't let them take the clipboard, they tried to walk around to my side of the table to read it over my shoulder, without explaining this to me until I was ending the interview moments later. This sounds like it could be a scene from The Office. Not me, but a buddy of mine interviewed someone for a job. At the end he asked, so, do you have any questions for me? The interviewee says no, but check this out. Pulls pant leg up to show new tattoo. Not an interviewer, but years ago my husband used Google to find something during an interview at Yahoo, while his screen was projected onto the wall, in front of the interviewers. Why do you want this job? I saw an opportunity, so I took it. It took him like 30 seconds to say. He was so stoned and a former student from when I was teaching. There was an interview that happened recently at my workplace. The interviewer asked the interviewee to elaborate on a part of his resume, to which the interviewee replied, my resume was written by a professional, and I'm not actually sure what he means by that part. Just know I've had contacting companies to complete rewrites of my resume before without my knowledge, and sometimes they just blatantly lie about things. I actually did get a job once after letting the interviewer know that I had no idea about some of the things on my resume. This guy was easily the worst interview I've done. He would ramble on for 5-10 minutes without really answering the question. Also, one of the questions I have to ask, tell me about a time you've had an upset customer. He started with I'm not racist, but and ended up basically saying all black people are thieves. Here's a really bad answer I gave. I applied to work at a candle shop at a mall. The guy who took my resume said they might need someone and started the interview. Why do you want to work here? Truth is, didn't want to leave my job at the time, but I was looking for something closer to home. For some reason I didn't want to say any version of that. I just said, it smells really great in here. RN here, doing group peer interviews with a candidate that came across to me a little self-sure. We asked a few clinical questions and one went along the lines of, do you know what to do when X equals Y? The candidate responded to the person asking the question with yeah. She did not get the job. I am finishing nursing school and I'm actually really curious to what the question was. Me. Tell us about your educational background. Interviewee. I have a degree in philosophy, so I'm probably useless to you and your unenlightened being. Me. In my head. WTF. Interviewee. In their head. Checkmate. How much bakery experience do you have? None, but I'm good at fixing cars. Perfect for Elmer's pies and auto repair. Was phone interviewing someone for a technical position. I could hear him tapping away on a keyboard, likely trying to Google the answer. Every time I asked him while he meandered around the answer. The sad part was, he wasn't even able to search for the right thing more than once. Me. So, what interested you in the position? Candidate, do you know how hard it is to lift a dead body? The position was for a part-time cashier. Little additional here. About an hour later I asked another interview if he had any criminal convictions, and that he didn't have to answer if he wasn't comfortable doing so. This guy told me 2 counts of attempted murder, but I don't see them anymore, so it's cool. I was interviewing someone for a customer service position. Tell me about a time you had to go out of your way to help a customer. I asked her. She gave me a 5-minute long answer about how she made sure that the customer respected her and how valuable her time was, and that sometimes you just have to put them in their place. They ask you all kinds of questions but they just need to think and then they'd know the answer. So I tell them to think for themselves and then they get it. She didn't get a call back. I used to manage a water park at a resort. One of the maintenance guys asked if I could interview his son for a lifeguard position. So I said sure, what the heck. I delegated the task to one of my newly minted supervisors as a training exercise. She's never interviewed someone before. While I sat in and watched. Anyway, kid comes in barely on time and I crap you not. He's wearing a wife beater, basketball shorts and socks with flip-flops. Now, I wasn't expecting a suit and tie. But come on. She, supervisor, looks at me wide-eyed but I motion her to continue the interview so as to not waste the opportunity. Kid expectedly bombs, and when it's over I ask the supervisor to leave. I don't believe in mincing words or giving false hope, so I tell him point blank, aside from the interview itself, why do you think we should hire you when you come in wearing all this, clearly indicating you don't respect us enough to even try? His response, you can't judge a book by its cover, bro. I think I just did. Me. So, why do you want to work with us? Him. Yes. Not the sharpest guy. You're hired. Thanks, you too. Interviewing for a free clinic for homeless people. We asked about their experiences with the homeless and this person told us a story of the time their family vacationed on a yacht in Fiji and then met a fisherman who traded them his entire day's catch for a handful of M&Ms. I was flabbergasted. You couldn't possibly be more out of touch. That fisherman probably wasn't even homeless. And also, why didn't they just give him their M&Ms without taking his hard-earned fish? Or pay him for the fish? Needless to say, they did not get the job. I was interviewing for seasonal ice rink staff. When asked why did you leave your last job, he replied, I got fired for helping a friend steal one of the snowboards. He also showed up in ripped jeans and a hoodie. He rolled his sleeves up halfway through the interview, revealing a cannabis leaf on each forearm. Asked an interviewee about his tech experience. I helped my mom set up a new iPad, and she's like, your age. Was in my mid-30s at the time. Sigh. Hold up. How old was the interviewee at that time? My fiance is a recruiter for bank tellers. She gets lots of people who don't quite understand the purpose of interviews. She had one that went like this. Her. Why did you leave your last job? Applicant. I hated that place and the customers were really crappy. Her. Okay. Did you give your employer a notice before leaving? A. Nah. I just stopped going. I really hated it there. Her. So what makes you think you'd be a good fit for company? A. I guess I live pretty close by. The interview ended shortly after that, obviously. Please don't talk bad about anybody during an interview. Not a good look. I had a person interviewing for an operator position. As soon as they sat down they looked directly at me and said, shouldn't you be in school or something? HR looked right at him and said, she's the engineer on these manufacturing lines and will be your direct supervisor. They definitely didn't get the job. Did interviews for a delivery company. Think UPS but regional. Asked a guy what qualities he possessed that could be an asset to the company. The usual bull's answer usually involved being a hard worker. Kudos to this guy for informing me his dad raced dirt track cars, and he'd driven them a couple of times, so he was excellent at driving fast. He then asked me if a pending DUI would be a problem. Thanks buddy. Not an employer, but the company I work for just hired on a chick who is pretty intense. During her interview they asked her how she handled stress. Her reply was something about her watching her kid die in front of her about a year ago. They still hired her before she started working with us. Our boss informed us of this as to try not and trigger her or anything. So she comes in and starts working with us and immediately starts talking about her dead son and how she's a hardcore conspiracy theorist. It was extremely uncomfortable. not an interviewer, but a co-worker told me about a guy they interviewed once who seemed perfect for the role. Until co-worker. So, we're a small team and help each other with whatever needs doing. It sometimes includes handling different equipment across sections. Sometimes we just need an extra hand to wipe the benches and sweep. Do you have any issues with expanding your role and assisting with a variety of tasks? Guy, of course not. I'm happy to help out wherever I'm needed, and any chance to do something new is a chance to learn and gain skills. I'll certainly assist in any task, except cleaning of course, that's women's work. Co-worker. To emphasize, my co-worker and the other person doing the interview were both women, and this wasn't the guy's bad attempts at humor. He was 100% serious in his answer. He did not get the job. I once had a male employee tell me he was going to wait until the female employees got there to wipe down the tables in a tutoring lab. Nothing heavy duty. I had to rephrase so that it was clear that I was instructing him to do it, not offering a choice. By the end of the semester it was clear why his wife left him. My boss is a console gamer. PlayStation. At the end of an interview he always asked the question PlayStation or Xbox. I remember one time the respondent said Xbox and I replied with a wrong answer. The guy was crushed. We explained it was just a joke and we did hire him, but I still remember that end of the world look on this poor guy's face. So a guy turns up 20 minutes late for the interview. No ringing to let us know he was running late. No apology when he eventually turned up and no reason given. So we get through the interview and eventually ask what qualities do you have that makes you think you are suited to this job. His reply, I am always on time. He was sitting on a watch. Was running a job site and had a young, early 20s, fellow smelling like Royal Reserve whiskey, approached me while I was doing some finicky drain related bulls, made fun of me because I was sweaty and dirty, and then went a ways down to ask one of my laborers who was in charge because he was looking for work. Well, he comes back to me looking like a kicked puppy and claims he wants a job in upper management because he has a business degree. Told him that won't happen and he confesses that he just needs a job. Any job. Well, have you ever eaten mashed potatoes with a spoon? Yeah. Why? Then you can work a shovel. Congratulations. Wasn't so much an answer, but making fun of a guy and then asking him if he can get you hired as his boss in a field you have zero experience in seems pretty dumb. This is a money dog. Upvote in the next 24 hours and money will come your way. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.